Well, things are getting very serious, especially when it comes to the larger tumultuous situation in Ukraine right now that could really go either way, as Donald Trump has just announced this.
It's just a senseless situation, and it's got to stop. So whatever I can do to stop it, and we are having discussions, yes.
Now, will it be stopped? As of course, we got some really surprising details, specifically around USAID, specifically around the larger demands that now Donald Trump is asking Ukraine to meet, as Russia is even saying, no. This can't happen here, as truly we are in a make or break, very dangerous moment right now in not just the history of America, but the history of Europe. As of course, if these negotiations stop, all bets are off of the table, and the situation could get very drastic, very dangerous, very quickly. And a lot of people need to understand, yes, Donald Trump is trying to make peace here, is trying to make amends here, but he's also dealing with an extremely difficult situation that is, according to some geopolitical experts, virtually impossible to try to unwind and fix here. As of course, the situation is very complicated, but it looks like Donald Trump is making good on a lot of his promises, specifically when it comes to recalling a lot of the nonsense that has led us to this particular situation, as Eric Weinstein specifically details how USAID has a lot of strong ties to Ukraine and has been one of their biggest funders, spending a lot of American taxpayer dollars distributing to very corrupted politicians in Ukraine, that many of which just take it for themselves, pocket it to themselves, as we just found out that in 2016, a USAID website was proudly claiming that they were supporting revolution in Ukraine. If you remember, there was a slow build-up to it that led up to the larger revolution, the Maidan revolution that happened in 2014. Those were the first days that the first shots were fired in this larger proxy war between the East and the West here. It's important to understand here, the United States, the intel agencies, USAID, John McCain when he was still alive, Lindsey Graham, and other bloodthirsty neoconservatives with the full might of the military-industrial complex came into Ukraine and said, you know what? We're going to make sure you guys are more on our side. We're going to make sure you're in our pockets, books, because, yeah, that's how we're just going to do it here, as Russia has established their red line, and a lot of other politicians within the U.S. government said, yeah, screw it. Let's just see what happens here, leading us to this kind of larger disaster situation. Russia has invaded. There's a full-on war here. Hopefully that war stops. But again, will it? I think Donald Trump is making the first good steps here when it comes to unraveling all of this by first cutting off the aid here, as the Ukrainians have been cut off from aid. And why are we spending aid money on propaganda media outlets? As we just found out, 9 out of 10 media outlets in Ukraine are relying on USAID funding. I'm sorry, but if you're a private enterprise, you should survive just off being a private enterprise. As, of course, the corporate media here in America is also being subsidized, as, of course, they should now be called the socialist media, as essentially they are milking the American taxpayer to spread propaganda and lie to us. Something that, of course, I never agree with. I want a full-on refund, but now we're also financing left-wing media publications in Poland, and now we're financing 9 out of the 10 media publications and outlets in Ukraine. What's going on here? As, of course, they probably were regurgitating a lot of propaganda, a lot of disinformation, and now we have the groundwork. Now we have the first steps towards understanding what the larger deal will be made here, as Trump soon will be unveiling his plan to end this 3-year conflict. Over 1,000 days that this conflict has gone on, as there are now high-stakes Munich Security Conference's announcement planned that will, of course, describe the larger kind of deal that's being made here. Now, Donald Trump is pretty good at making deals here, as he likes to over-ask in some instances, and then kind of meet in the middle and negotiate with the parties involved in a way where they're more likely to offer up and make a deal, because, quote, it's not the quite biggest deal that Donald Trump originally kind of asked for, as now we are finding out that the Ukrainians are also asking for a lot, as they're demanding, we want nuclear weapons or NATO membership, either or, But we want some assurances. We want some guarantees here that the Russians no longer will be attacking us and invading us in the future. The Russians, they want demilitarization. They don't want the Ukrainians to have nuclear weapons. That, of course, will change the landscape here, as, of course, Donald Trump wants to get rid of all nuclear weapons. He's working on getting rid of nuclear weapons from China, from Russia, from Iran, from hopefully Israel too. But he's working on eliminating all of nuclear weapons on the face of this earth. Now Ukraine kind of coming here saying, yeah, you know what? We want those nuclear weapons. That just seems like a very big overreach here as Ukraine that is definitely losing a lot of significant territory here, that definitely is dealing with Russian advances. As, you know, the morale with the Ukrainians isn't high. Let's just be real with ourselves. A lot of Ukrainians have fled the country. A lot of them understand that there's probably going to be an end to this larger conflict. So why do they need to fight this? As, of course, they're outmanned here. And the morale, the desertions, from all the reports that I'm getting, from everything that I'm seeing, especially from my people that tell me a lot of the insight that's really happening there, are telling me that they are at an all-time high. Now, Volodymyr Zelenskyy also had a very interesting conversation with Piers Morgan, where Piers Morgan kind of brought up some criticisms of him, specifically detailing how Joe Rogan criticized him for potentially starting a larger global conflict here. And this is what Volodymyr Zelenskyy had to say about that.
With all the respect to the boys, to Joe Rogan, to his guest, you understand, I have the feeling when the war is somewhere away from somebody, we speculate and we do not understand all the pain. But when we replicate to our experience, to our life, we can find more right answers. On the 9/11, there was an attack on the United States of America.
Yeah, is it fair to compare the two? I don't think so, especially since the larger kind of back and forth here, especially with the Nord Stream pipeline, especially with the attacks on the Crimea Bridge, especially on some of the civilian attacks, some of, you know, the larger kind of more egregious, aggressive maneuvers being made by Ukraine here. I think some of Joe Rogan's criticisms are absolutely merited here, as it's important to note here that we have been on this larger trajectory, not just because of Zelenskyy, but because of the U.S. intel agencies that have been literally getting involved and saying, you know what? There's not going to be a peace deal here. There's not going to be a negotiation here. You know, we're gonna continue the money laundering. We're gonna continue the human trafficking. Also, if you care about Slavic people, holy freaking cow! Like the human, you go into other parts of Europe right now, and you go into a lot of the kind of adult places, all Ukrainian people. Sad situation that's unfolding there. That really is just absolutely tragic, as of course the people of Ukraine have been sold out by failed leadership that has put them in these very dangerous, precarious situations. Now, to be fair, the Ukrainian leadership really wasn't ever there for their population, as of course they were known to being one of the most corrupted places on the face of this earth. That's why there's a lot of also horrible things that happen to the people of Ukraine, especially when it comes to illness, especially when it comes to things like HIV. I won't even get into it, but let's just be clear here. The government of Ukraine for many decades now has failed the people, and it has led to tremendous human suffering. This is kind of a weird segue here, but hey, regardless of that, check out wearechange.shop and make sure you're not, I'm not even going to do it. It's not fair to make that joke. I'm not even going to make that joke. I am going to tell you about my supplements, which are great, which are really awesome, which you should get. As of course, I give this to my friends. I give this to my family members. This is something that I personally take. Today, I took some Common Sense Creatine. I'm going to take some TakeCalm.com in just a little bit here with my meal. I had some essential fatty. Later on, I'll take some magnesium glycinate to help me go to sleep here. I ebb and flow, especially when it comes to some of my supplementations that I personally take here. And I definitely recommend that. So you guys could kind of track and trace and understand how your body's feeling, how you're feeling off of stuff, on stuff. And this is the kind of way to really Hone in what is right for you on a one-on-one individual basis, because if something's right for one person doesn't mean it's right for you. But overall, a lot of the stuff that we have on here, like the fish oil, the creatine, the magnesium glycinate, very safe, very good. We tested the fish oil, by the way, made sure that there's no heavy metals in there. It's from sardines, some of the finest, best stuff out there on the market. Get yourself some essential fatty good stuff over here. I love taking this stuff here, especially if you are a smoker. Check out Essential Fatty. Really crazy studies surrounding that. But once you click on one of the supplements, we usually have a video on the top kind of right-hand corner. You play there, and it tells you all about the kind of larger things that you need to look at, especially when it comes to getting some of the supplements. Again, fish oil is really good for your brain function, your heart function, overall health, well-being, all through fish oils, especially if you are genetically someone that needs fish. And most of the fish, sadly, is filled with microplastics. A lot of the fish is also filled with heavy metals. It's not some good stuff here. And I'm like, okay, most of our stuff is kind of content. I'm going to make sure I'm going to get the source that is actually good for me. And when I'm not having fish in a regular diet, which, again, it's very hard to source really good fish, I just have some of the fish oils, and bada bing, bada boom, I have this whole kind of complete diet that I'm always kind of looking at to have personally myself in order to be the best, strongest version of myself. You should do the same. Start your independent health journey. WeAreChange.shop here. As of course, let's just say worst case scenario, the Ukrainians are like, no, we're not negotiating. We want a nuke. We want NATO membership. All of the things that Russia said no to. It looks like Donald Trump is trying to go to Putin and say, "Hey, man, let's broker some kind of deal here, and let's make sure that the Ukrainians get at least something here." And it looks like there's a lot of back and forth here between Putin and Trump, as according to insider sources, Trump is also talking very tough with Vladimir Putin as the negotiations have ratcheted up here, and they are very serious. Now, again, Donald Trump clearly stated, I want peace here. I don't want this larger nonsense, but I also want some rare earth minerals. Yes. Donald Trump also just came out and said, hey, Ukrainians, you guys want more funding? You guys want more aid? Give us something in return. As of course, the previous administration was just kind of giving them a lot of their money. The money went missing, and it went into the pockets of a lot of these corrupted bureaucrats. It went to the pockets of corrupted Ukrainian politicians, American politicians, middlemen, CIA, black budgets, all that stuff. Oh, poof, it's just gone. Donald Trump's doing something different. He's like, yeah, I'm not going to money launder. I'm not going to fill the pockets of all these like bureaucrats and central controllers and all these other corrupted criminal thieves. I'm going to make sure this country actually gets something in return when we give you something in a fair exchange. And that's why Donald Trump is now asking for rare earth minerals that the Ukrainians are kind of open to giving to the United States in exchange for security, in exchange for aid and money. Now, very interestingly here, the Ukrainians are open to this larger idea because, you know, the United States paused their weapon shipments to them, and the Russian forces are continuing to gain ground in Ukraine, and the Ukrainians are struggling. Again, this conflict has gone on for 1,077 days. 1,077 days too long, as the Russians are even coming out and saying, yeah, no, we don't want this to happen here. And we're against this since, of course, Russia wants some territory. Russia wants some of the land. And they are finding rare earth minerals. They are finding energy resources. And when you look at the larger kind of trajectory of pipelines and energy resources and trade routes and, you know, Ukraine being the breadbasket of Europe and a lot of other places around the world, Ukraine is an extremely important strategic country. The Russians want some of that territory. Donald Trump want some of those resources as well. Who will get it? What will be the compromises that will be made here? Well, the Ukrainians, even though they're losing ground inside of Ukraine, they're launching continued drone strikes into Russian oil depots and Russian infrastructure when it comes to their kind of energy. The Russians are answering back and, of course, attacking a lot of the energy infrastructure of Ukraine. And again, it's just the back and forth here. But imagine what happens once we find out that there's no possibility for peace here. Now, slowly things are looking up. We have Volodymyr Zelenskyy just announced that he is open towards meeting with Vladimir Putin. Again, this is better than when Boris Johnson came in there, ripped up the deal that both of them wanted, and then Volodymyr Zelenskyy came out later and said, I will never, ever sit down and negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Zelenskyy now is changing his tune, changing what he said before and saying, yeah, I'll sit down with him. Yeah, that sounds cool.
If we move forward to potentially this peace summit with the 4 groups, as you say, how are you going to feel sitting opposite Vladimir Putin at a negotiating table? Do you think you can do that, given how you feel about him?
Якщо це буде єдина конференція,
If that is the only setup in which we can bring peace to the citizens of Ukraine and not lose people, definitely we will go for this setup for the meeting with these 4 participants. What does it matter what is my attitude to him? I will not be kind to him, and I believe that I consider him an enemy. And to be honest, I believe he considers me an enemy as well. That's it.
In the face of all of the death and destruction that happened here, you would say, yeah, I'll put my ego aside. I'll actually negotiate in good faith. Can't even have that. So that's just a little disappointing here. Obviously, it's a war. Obviously, a lot of people lost their lives here. But the Ukrainian people, let's just be honest here, would have been way better off if that first peace deal that was usurped by UK, US intelligence, if they were able to sign that first initial peace deal, things would have been so much better. So many young men would have still been alive today. And what's happening out there in Ukraine right now is an utter travesty. It is gruesome. It is absolutely disgusting. You see some of the videos that come out from some of the battles, some of the kind of larger trench warfare. It is just the most evilest, most awful, most horrible thing that a lot of people can't even imagine, can't even fathom. And once you kind of see the brutality, the larger kind of conflict of all these young Slavic men losing all of their lives, you kind of have to ask yourself, what are you doing? No, I'm still going to be mean to, stop. Stop with this nonsense. Grow up. Like, you're comparing this nonsense that you're playing a role in, and you're just, it's totally him. No, it's not. There's a back and forth here. And I think if Donald Trump is going to make some headway here, he goes in there and he says, hey, stop acting like children. All right? Let's make a good deal here. Some of you guys are going to get something you don't like. But at the end of the day, these people stop dying. Now, if this war doesn't get stopped, you could expect major escalations from the Russians and very desperate acts by the Ukrainians. Again, the Ukrainians losing a lot of territory, and we're going to reach a point where, let's be honest, the leverage here is by the Russians, especially with all the territory that they have here. Now, the United States could put out some drastic moves here, but I think the Russians are pretty happy with what they got, and they might just say, yeah, we're just going to keep this, and whatever you guys want to do, you guys could try to do here. But overall, this has to end immediately. And I hope the Russians lose out on this. I hope the Ukrainians lose out on this. But I hope the war ends. And if you agree, share this video with your friends and family members. We got to get this message out there to the general public. The corporate media that has been cheerleading this, they're all being exposed for being paid puppets of the establishment through this USAID that has been cheerleading this larger human sacrifice that needs to end immediately. Love you guys. Stay tuned for more here on youtube.com/wearechange.